Em o nome de Jesus. Amém.
And the Son and the Holy Spirit.
Baptis engkau dalam nama Bapa, Anak, dan Roh Kudus, yaitu dalam nama Tuhan Yesus.
Dan Allah Roh Kudus dalam nama Yesus Kristus. Haleluya.
Maybe you are familiar with this video. A video where a group of people, they gathered with white clothes and they gather in the swimming pool, they got immersed, and then the pastor pray for them. After that, they sing a song and they pray together and they also take pictures together. So this is my home culture, and my home culture is called baptism. So in Christianity, baptism means the sacrament that symbolizes the purification or symbolize the beginning of a new life in Jesus Christ. So in the Christian, when a people or when a person receive Jesus as their God, so he or she begin the new life. So he or she don't live anymore in the sinful habits. They live their old life, they live their sinful habits, and they now live in the Holy Spirit. So this is called baptism. And the water symbolizes like something that clean ourselves, something that erase or remove all sin or stain in our body, in ourself, and so that we can live in the new life. According to the Bible, Christianity do the baptism because Jesus asked us to do so. In Matthew chapter 28 verse 19, it said that, "God all of you therefore, and teach all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit." And if we look into the iceberg theory, we can see that the tip of the iceberg, there are two types of baptism, which is immersion and effusion. And if we go deeper in the bottom of the iceberg, we can see the three ideology, which is that we die with the old life, and then we resurrect with Jesus. After that, we begin the new life with the Holy Spirit. So these are the points and the message of the baptism, where we, as the Christian people, we leave our old style and we begin the new life. And as I mentioned before, there are two types of baptism. There are immersion and effusion. In immersion, the person do the baptism in the pool, and they got immersed in the water and they are fully wet. But in the effusion, they don't do it in the pool. They just use water to pour it above their head. So in this video, I will explain more detail in the effusion, which is in my home culture in Presbyterian Church. But before we go deeper, we have to look at the history of the baptism itself. Actually, baptism or purification ritual is not firstly started in the Christianity or even in Jesus' era. Actually, there are also some nation or religion that has already had the ritual of purification, such as Egypt, Persian, and Hinduism. And also in the Greek and Roman ritual, they also do the immersion in the sea and the effusion as the purification ritual. Even in Jew, they already do the baptism, but it's not like in the Christian. In Jew, baptism is not sacramental. In Jewish tradition, they do the baptism if the non-Israel people want to be accepted in the community. So when non-Israel people come into the Jew, they want to be accepted in that community, they need the circumcised and baptized. And if we look in the church before Reformation, we see that the baptism is as the ritual to enter the church. So when people want to be the member of the church, they need to be baptized. And it also symbolizes that they accept Jesus as their gods and they are already redeemed. Until in the 2nd century, that Augustinus stated that baptism can perish inherited sin, but can't remove the whole stain in human. So in the era before Reformation, baptism has 4 main points. It is to as a sign as church member, it is to purify people from sin, as a spiritual renewal, and to unite people in church. And after the Reformation, Martin Luther stated that baptism baptism depends on the person's heart. So baptism must come from the people's awareness and people's personal experience to God, so that they can give themselves to be baptized. And this is also mentioned in the Belgic Confession that written in 1561, which stated that baptism isn't only when the water reaches us, but also along our life. So it is not just when the ritual begin and end, but it also about our life, our whole life after being baptized. That is the most important. And you might think that how a fusion can start it. As we know, baptism is mostly about immersion. So there are several churches that believe that baptism should be in the effusion, which is Lutheran, Gospel, and Calvinist church. And in my church, in Presbyterian church, we also believe that baptism is in the effusion, because Presbyterian church is the combination of Calvinist and Reformed. So we got the influence from John Calvin's ideology, and then we adopted until today. There are several verses in the Bible that mention or can be interpreted as baptism in the effusion way. Firstly, in the Acts chapter 10, verse 44 until 48, Cornelius was baptized by Peter, and in that context, Cornelius was in his house, and there is no evidence or verse that indicate that there is a pool or water in his house. So this verse can be interpreted that Peter bring the water and pour it into Cornelius' head. And secondly, we can also see in the Act 2 verse 37 until 41, which stated that 3,000 people were baptized in the Pentecost. And at that time, it will be so difficult and tiring for the disciples to baptize 3,000 people. And the pool and the river will be extremely crowded and full. So that this verse also can be interpreted as a fusion. It can be make it simpler and easier. And this also can be emphasized in the historical manuscript that stated that in 380 Anno Domini, Caesar Theodosius made a decree Theodosius which said that Christian is the religion of the Roman Empire, and all people in Rome must adopt Christianity. If not, they will be punished. So at that time, there was the massive Christianization. All people in Rome at that time were baptized, and they have to obey the Theodosius. And it will be so difficult for the pastor to baptize all people at once. It will be so very tiring, and the water also not sufficient. So that they use the effusion to baptize the people. So effusion is kind of baptism that used for the easier way, because when the availability of the water is low, the people can use the effusion as the alternative. In conclusion, if you look at the type of the iceberg again, although there are two types of baptism like effusion or immersion, the ideology or the message is still the same, which means that we are being purified by God and we have to live the new life because our sin is already redeemed by Jesus. So that is my home culture. Thank you for listening.